Here's the thing. Every single person sitting here this morning, regardless of your religious leanings, has a relationship with God. Every person who's ever been born and who's walked the face of this earth has a relationship with God. This is why I say the gospel is not what you think. Because many of us think that I need to have a relationship with God somehow. And so I'm going to do that by doing X, Y, or Z. I'm going to go do yoga, or I'm going to go worship Buddha, or I'm going to follow his teachings, or I'm going to become a Muslim, or I'm going to become a Christian. And we say by doing those things, we now have a relationship with God. We didn't have one before, and now we do. But here's the deal. We all have a relationship with God. If you're an atheist sitting here this morning, you have a relationship with the one you don't think exists. If you're a Christian here this morning, it's just sort of not even practicing, quote unquote, what you believe, you have a relationship with God. If you are a Christian who loves Jesus, knows Jesus, worships Jesus, you have a relationship with God. And you also had a relationship with God before you did those things. Every person in the world has a relationship with God. Regardless of what you believe, regardless of what you think, here's the thing. He is either your father or he is your judge. You either worship him as father or you will kneel before him as judge. See, we're all insubordinate. We've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, Romans 3 tells us. Romans 3 also tells us there's no one good, not even one, that our mouths are like open graves. Romans 6:23 tells us that the wages of our sin is death. This is not a good situation for us. We're all insubordinate, and the penalty for our insubordination is death. When the judge comes to judge, if God is our judge, we die. And here's the problem. You're all and I include myself in this, obviously, we are all consistent failures. Nod your head, yes. It's true. Consistently, you fail in word, thought, and deed. Even when you do what is right, here's the funny thing. You get transformed by Jesus, you start doing what is right. What happens? You become self-righteous. So even when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, that self-righteousness creeps up inside. And you're like, why isn't everybody else doing what I'm doing? You're all sinners. And so now we're guilty of that. And so we're consistently failing. I heard one pastor tell his story. It was Billy Graham's grandson. When he was growing up, totally in Chavigan, when he was growing up in his house, a very obviously Christian household, when Billy Graham's your grandfather, you pretty much can't escape the gospel, can you? And he's growing up, he became rebellious. He got kicked out of the house at 15 years old. And so what he went out and did is he went out and lived a rebellious lifestyle. He drank it up. He slept with women. He did everything that he ever wanted to do. He thought this was freedom. He was living in freedom, free to do what you want to do. You young people sitting here this morning, guess what? You're not alone in this. I'm not just saying you young people. We always blame the young people for wanting to live in freedom. Your parents want to live in freedom too, just as bad as you. Usually when they get angry at you, it's because they're just jealous. And he goes out and he lives this life of freedom that he thought was freedom. And all of a sudden what happened is God gets a hold of him. I think he probably went to one of his grandfather's crusades. Walks up the aisle. Now, I don't know if that happened. But the gospel that he heard his whole life invades his heart. And he becomes a Christian. And you know what he did? He says, then I became an unbelievable legalist. He went from extreme freedom to extreme law. And he started becoming this self-righteous Christian. And the point is this, is that he was very consistent, he says, in his failures. And he was deserving of death. But here's the thing. Jesus, Mark is saying in the gospel, is a consistent and persistent Savior.